Well, hello. It's been a while since I've just spoken to the microphone for a while. I'm not doing a proper video for this because I am not very well. So, um, my face is a bit uglier than it normally is, which kind of sucks, but, whatever. Fun fact, my last video got deleted by Mojang's legal team, which is oh so fun. So if any of you are wondering where that video went to, there's your answer. Anyway, today I saw that Maker's Muse posted a almost a reboot to a hashtag that he created, I think like 8 or 9 years ago now, and that is 3D printing on YouTube. And that is where the 3D printing community essentially helps out the newbies. And it's also just a fun time to share some information, share some experiences, share some stories. So, let's do that. Question number 1. When did you first hear about 3D printing? So I first heard about 3D printing in, I think it was 2014, and it was on the Barnacles Nerdgasm YouTube channel where he did a 3D printing series. And I had found this particular video because I was very much into my action cameras, and naturally I was quite interested in GoPros. So, after looking for reviews and various videos on the Hero 4, which had been announced that same year, I ended up stumbling across Nerdgasm's 3D printing video, where he 3D printed a frame mount for his Hero 4. Because the frame mount, it just goes around the camera, it's just a piece of plastic, and it just allows you to connect it to other things. Which the case with that comes with the camera also allows you to do that, but it also doesn't have a hole for the ports, for the USB ports, so you can like power it. And obviously you can buy the frame mounts, but they are incredibly expensive for just a piece of plastic. So seeing it being 3D printed for less than 50p blew my mind at the time, and I wanted in on that. The thing about that, though, was that he was using an Ultimaker 2, which are legendary machines, but also very expensive machines. So I had no funding to get anything like that, and so I didn't. But I also saw him do other stuff on it. It kind of got me hooked on the series, and just watching a bunch of the videos, I saw him print like an amplifier, like a passive audio amplifier for a smartphone. He printed some Lego bits. Obviously, they're not actual Legos, they're just generic building blocks made of plastic. I'm going to get sued by Lego now. Just watch. And I think he also printed a phone case out of flexible material, which I've not messed with yet, but I hope to soon now that I have a printer that can do it. We'll get to that later. So that's where I first heard about 3D printing, and then I got my first taste of it in 2016 or 2017, I think, where at school we did this like college taster day where we were deciding what college to go to. And one of the things that I chose to learn in these days was engineering, 3D modeling. And so that's where I got introduced to Autodesk Inventor, which is the first modeling software that I used, and I did really, really well in that class. I ended up helping basically everybody else cheat, because I would do it, and I also happened to carry a bunch of USB sticks around, so I would do all the work in a couple minutes and then pass the USB off to my friends who were really struggling and didn't have any interest in this, and they just pretended that they also did it. Regardless, I definitely did well in that class, and although we didn't actually 3D print anything, we did laser cut some toothbrush holders, which I still have in my bathroom. It's made of like an acrylic material. Again, no actual 3D printing was done there, though, so it did, however, reignite my interest in the technology. And so 2 years later, good transition on to question number 2, What was the first thing you 3D printed? Now, this is going to be a bit of a boring one, but the first thing I 3D printed was a spool holder that was just already on the SD card that came with my first printer, which happened to be a 2018 TiVo Tornado. And that printer ended up being quite the problem child for me because it was just non-stop problems all the way through. But it was a good tinkering lesson, so I don't regret it. I think the next thing I 3D printed was just a benchy. Just a regular boat, because I saw that that's what everyone 3D prints. Good way to test the printer, printing a benchy. Question number 3. Do you view 3D printing as a hobby or a tool? And why? So when I had my TiVo Tornado, I used to see it as a hobby. It was 100% a hobby to me. I would make videos on fixing small problems that I had. Also just requesting help from the greater community because I was still very much incompetent. But it was a fun time. I now don't view it as a hobby. It's definitely more of a tool for me because I build other things now. Mostly I build robots because I'm a bit of a fan of robots. Mine aren't combat, but they are big and badass, which, I mean, that gets points, right? And having a 3D printer allows me to very easily prototype components that I would get made out of metal from a metalworking company. But obviously that's expensive and time consuming, so 3D printing, just to make sure I can fit check it first, is very invaluable to me because prototyping is just so much easier, quicker, and cheaper doing it with 3D printing. Some of the components on my large robot that I'm working on are still 3D printed, and that's kind of how I'm going to keep it because I don't see a reason to get a lot of this stuff made out of metal if I'm going to be changing it a lot. So for me, definitely a tool now, although it used to be a hobby. Question number 4. What is the best 3D printer, according to you? Now, for me, I ended up replacing that TiVo Tornado with a Prusa i3 Mark III's Plus, which I got the assembled version because I had just gotten a job at that point, and I didn't know if I had time to assemble it because I knew it was quite a lengthy assembly process. If I had to do it again now, I probably would get the kit version so that I can build it myself, because I just think you learn a lot that way. But it has just been super, super reliable for me. And obviously I've only had 2 3D printers, so I can't exactly say, oh yeah, this is the best printer indefinitely, because the best printer for you kind of depends on what you want from it. You know, a Prusa i3 is probably not the best option for you if you want a particularly large print area, because they are quite small. But Prusa's a good company. I believe in them. I think Joseph Prusa is just someone that you just kind of have to love. Just his startup story and losing power to a bunch of people in Prague, that's just funny to me. I've not found any issues with them. My Prusa hasn't broken down, and I've had it for a good few years now. So I'm pretty happy with my purchase. Yes, they're expensive, I know, but it's been worth it for me. 100% worth it. Reliability is just second to none, especially compared to the Tornado that I had previously. It was just prone to problems. And number 5. What is your number 1 tip for beginners? Now I'm going to bend the rules slightly and give you 2 tips. My first tip is to not be afraid to tinker. It's almost guaranteed that the problems that you're facing have been solved before. So there's always a way, you just gotta find it. And not everyone documents it. If you can document the way you solve your problems, then that's great. You get some free YouTube subs, and you feel all good about yourself because people are commenting nice things. When I first got my Tornado, I was afraid to change the filament. Even outside of printing, I would let the spool completely run out before I change it. And the reason I did that was because I was afraid of removing the filament, because I was just not certain that I could do it and not break the printer entirely, which in hindsight was a bit stupid. But honestly, that's how I felt at the time. And I'm not going to say that I was wrong. We have fears for a reason. But I am going to say it was unjustified. I was more competent than I gave myself credit for. So, I mean, it took me many years to actually change the filament without needing to. So, do that if you're in a situation where you're afraid to do something very simple, in that way, or if you need to access the hot end of your printer and you need to remove the fans and everything. If you can 3D print, then you can solve the problems on a 3D printer. Like they are not all that complicated. It's just when you break it down to its parts, it's just a series of motors, a thing that gets really, really hot, and a very, very basic computer. I had to reflash the bootloader on my Tornado at one point because while installing a BL Touch, I overwrote the bootloader and then it wouldn't turn on. So I didn't think I would be able to solve that, but I did in the end. Just take it one step at a time and you'll be able to conquer a lot of the problems that you don't think you will be able to conquer. So don't be afraid. Just dive in. And that leads me on to my second tip. And this is more to help other people. But when you are asking for help in forums, make sure you are being as detailed as you can. Include any information you have, things like what you've already tried, everything you know about the problem, how your machine is set up, what attachments you've done, what modifications you've got. Anything you can helps people, because people end up wasting their time saying, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? I mean, we all know the whole, have you tried turning it off and back on again? Like, yes. So you can eliminate a lot of that by just being as detailed as possible in your reports. And I would say that is incredibly important to do. But that about wraps up this video. I will see you in the next one, where hopefully I'm not getting sued by another massive company. Bye!